Hello fellow readers and readeresses. Today for you I have a bit of a book haul, and by that I mean around 47 books if I'm not mistaken. These I have managed to acquire in a very short amount of time, mostly because I have undertaken to participate in a few reading challenges this year, and in order to do that I had to purchase certain books. But to be honest, the majority of those I just saw in the store and I liked and I purchased, and they're here now and we're going to talk about them. I probably won't stop much to talk about the synopsis of any of these books because, for one, I tend to not read the synopsises if I can avoid that. I prefer to go into books as blind as possible, but also because often I forget what I read from the synopsis as soon as I'm done reading it. So we'll see how much I can tell you about any of these books. I have split them by genre and put timestamps down in the description in case you're interested in one specific genre. Now without further ado, let's go. We're gonna start with my favorite genre that always reigns king on this channel, and that is fantasy. And the first book I have for you today is The Slow Regard of Silent Things by Patrick Rothfuss. This is book number 2.5 from the Kingkiller Chronicles, and I read the first book from this series, The Name of the Wind, back in December, and if you'd like to hear me talk about it, you can watch this summary over here. But generally, I loved it. It made my favorite books of the year, and so I immediately purchased book number 2, and now I purchased book number 2.5. This book is a novella that follows one specific character from this story, and that is Auri, who lives under the school. At least she did in book 1. I haven't read book 2 yet, so we'll see. It is a very short story with very nice illustrations here and there that aren't anything too spectacular, but they always make the reading experience so much nicer when you run into them. I love seeing illustrations even in books for grown-ups. I can't wait to get to this one, but again, I have to read book 2 before I get to it. The next book I have for you is a book I already read, and that is The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson. This is book number 4 in the second era of the Mistborn series, and the last one actually in the second era. I won't talk about the plot because, well, obviously I don't want to spoil you this being the last book in a series, but to summarize the plot of the second era of Mistborn, we follow Wax and Wayne, who are lawmen. It's kind of like a Western setting, but in this specific world. Again, I don't want to spoil you if you haven't read the first era of the Mistborn series. I had a great time reading this. As always, Mistborn is one of my favorite series ever. Fun fact is that I actually read this book way before I got it. I pre-ordered it last year, and then as soon as it was out on the 15th of November, I wanted to read it, but since it arrives from abroad, it was going to take way too long for it to get here, and I decided to purchase it as an ebook and read it that way, and I did, and I had a great time. But now it's here. I don't know why I'm getting into so much detail. You probably don't care, but here it is. Next, we have the first 3 books from a fantasy series that I'm very, very excited about, and that is Otherland by Tad Williams. We have City of Golden Shadow, which is book number 1, Mountain of Black Glass, which is book number 2, and River of Blue Fire, which is book number 3. To be honest, I know absolutely nothing about this series besides the fact that everybody's saying great things about it, and I know that Tad Williams is an amazing author who has managed to inspire a lot of the contemporary fantasy writers, so I am very much looking forward to reading this one. Those are all big chunkers, so I will see whenever I will find the time to actually read them. Next, we have a book that is on my 12 Books by 12 Friends reading challenge. You can watch it over here if you want to. And the book is The Night Watch by Sergei Lukyanenko. This is a fantasy. I don't know if it's adult or young adult. To be honest, I don't know anything about this book besides what my friend told me, the friend who recommended it, and that is Harry Potter for grown-ups with vampires, which sounded absolutely fantastic to me, and therefore I immediately purchased it and can't wait to read it. Next, we have sort of a duology of short stories that I'm very excited about, and those are Book of Swords parts 1 and 2. These are compilations of short stories edited by, or gathered rather, by Gardner Dozois. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce this name, but apparently he's an award-winning editor, and these are again collections of short stories by some of the best fantasy authors out there. To just read you a few, in part 1 we have KJ Parker, Robin Hobb, Ken Liu, Matthew Hughes, Kate Elliott, Walter John Williams, Daniel Abraham, CJ Karen, I don't know, and Garth Nix. I mean, look at this roster here. And then in part 2, we have Ellen Kushner, Scott Lynch, Richard Larson, Elizabeth Bear, Levi Tidhar, Cecilia Holland, and George R.R. Martin. Again, all amazing writers, and being that I'm not much for short stories, I am hoping that these are actually going to get me to enjoy them and read them more. The next book we have is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I believe this is a young adult fantasy and the beginning of a new story, and I don't know pretty much anything about it, but I have seen it in so many places and people keep on talking about it, and a lot of them say that it's a funny, tongue-in-cheek kind of fantasy that doesn't take itself too seriously and is supposed to be very interesting. I haven't ever read anything by the author, although I do believe Caraval has been written by her and I own it and I haven't read it yet. And to be honest, I was quite hesitant to actually purchase this one because I couldn't see myself being really excited about picking it up, but I have been wrong before and I decided to give in to the hype and purchase it. The purchase of the next book was also kind of dictated by hype, and that is The Atlas Paradox by Olivia Blake. This is the second book in the Atlas series, the first one being The Atlas 6, which is a very, very famous book, which I own and I haven't yet read. But I saw this one and I saw it in the same format as the first one that I own here, so I decided to purchase it to fill my collection, so to speak, and if one day I decide to pick The Atlas 6 and like it, to continue with the series. The next book I'm going to talk about, I actually got in an Illumicrate box, and that is The Luminaries by Susan Dennard. Look at this gorgeous book. I mean, what can I say? I remember reading the synopsis of this one and commenting on it, and now can't remember anything besides I thought one part was sort of cringy. If you want to see me react to the synopsis and talk about it more and also show you the full book because it's super, super beautiful, you can watch my unboxing of the Illumicrate box over here. Next we have another young adult fantasy, and that is Cursed by Marissa Meyer. To be honest, I only purchased this book because I like The Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, but I don't know anything about this one. Oh, by the way, look, it has sprayed edges, sprayed and stenciled. Why wouldn't it focus? There you go. I saw it here in a store and purchased it, and only after that I realized that it's actually the second book in a series. This is not the first time this happens to me. Either way, I will try to find the first book in kind of the same edition as this one so that I can fill my collection and, you know, start reading it eventually one day. Next we have another second book in a series, and that is Mr. Impossible by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the second book in the Dreamer trilogy, and I believe the first one was called Call Down the Hawk. Yes. This is a young adult series, I believe, and it follows a few young people, some of which are dreaming and bringing their dreams to life, and that's why they're being hunted or something like that. I remember reading a few chapters from the first book a while back and then dropping it because I wasn't in the mood for it at the time, but I saw this one in the store and I decided to purchase it because it's very difficult to find this sort of books here in Bulgaria, and immediately as soon as I saw it, I thought I need to have it right now, otherwise I will be sorry. And the last book from the fantasy genre we're going to talk about today is the deluxe collector's edition of The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan that Orbit released last year. Look at this thing. How beautiful is this? Oh, phenomenal. I have been known to purchase a book or 10 just because of the cover, and this is no exception. I already own 3 other versions of this book. I couldn't. As soon as I saw them announcing it online, I was immediately gripped by this absolute gorgeousness that you see here. You can see the end pages here as well. There are no illustrations or anything, just the little headers for the chapters. It's just so gorgeous and such a great quality, and it wasn't that expensive when I saw it, so I decided that it's worth spending some money on this luxurious item. And now I have it to add to my bookshelves and another of the most beautiful books I've ever owned. Next, we're going to continue with some historical fiction, of which I have more than usual. And the first book is a very famous one, and that is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This is a standalone historical fiction, obviously, that follows a girl during the Second World War or something like that. A girl that talks to death and steals books, and that is all I know about it. I've been meaning to read it for so many years, and for some reason, one reason or another, I always postpone it. But when I saw it in the store the other day, I couldn't pass it by and decided to purchase it and hopefully read it this year. Next, we have a trilogy that is technically historical fiction, but a lot of people qualify it as fantasy, and that is The Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell. We have The Winter King, The Enemy of God, and Excalibur. I believe this series is a take on the Arthurian legend, and I've heard so many people hail it as one of the best works of fiction out there, and I am so looking forward to reading it. And I've had these books on the back of my mind for literally years at this point, and I don't even know why it took me so long to get them. I don't have this series on my official TBR for the year, but to be honest, I would like to at least start it this year. The next book I have for you is A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. This is a book that a friend of mine read somewhat recently and kept on recommending to me, and I always kind of said, yeah, I will read it, and never really did pick up until I saw it in a store like 2 weeks ago, I think, and I was like, okay, that's the book. I think it's set in Afghanistan, and it's heart-wrenching and very deep and meaningful. I'm looking forward to reading this. I haven't read a book of that nature ever since I was, 15 years old, so this is going to be an experience. And talking about heart-wrenching books, we have All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Doerr? Who knows? This is a book that is set during the Second World War, I believe, and it follows a blind French girl and a German boy whose lives get intertwined, and we see them trying to be kind to each other in a world that does everything to keep them apart, I'm guessing. I'm not entirely sure. This cover, by the way, I'm assuming it is based on the Netflix adaptation, but it's so beautiful and I absolutely adore it. So yeah, this is going to be the year of the heavy books, I'm guessing. And following up with that theme, we have The Black Obelisk by Eric Maria Remarque. This is a Bulgarian edition of the book. I was trying to find the English one, but it's near impossible to get it. This book is set, I believe, after the First World War. I'm not entirely sure, but I believe that's the time where Germany is going through so much turmoil and people have lost their way and dealing with hyperinflation. We're following a young man who works in a company for tombstones, and in his free time, he plays organ in an insane asylum. So talk about gloom and darkness, but I am very much looking forward to reading this one because a friend of mine mentioned the books of this author, and she said that they are very meaningful and eye-opening and beautiful in their own way. I was looking to purchase another book from this author, The Night in Lisbon, because it's on one of my reading challenges for the year, but I couldn't find it, neither in Bulgarian nor English, and so I opted for this one in case I don't find the other one. And even if I find it, this sounds like an amazing book, and I am very much looking forward to reading it. And that was it for the historical fictions, and now it's time for some mysteries and thrillers. And the first book I have on this list is Fight Club by Chuck Palahniuk. Yeah, that guy. This book is the one that the movie is based on, and I have not watched the movie because I have not watched so many great movies out there, and I've been wanting to watch it, but as soon as I put a movie on, I fall asleep. It is a curse. So I decided to opt for reading the book instead, and I am so much looking forward to it. This is an adult psychological thriller, if anybody is not familiar with it, and I was kind of spoiled about the big twist at the ending, so that is unfortunate, but I'm hoping I'm still going to enjoy it. It's not a very big book, so I'm pretty sure it's not going to take me long to get through it. Next, we have 3 random books from the same series. The Cormoran Strike by Robert Galbraith. This is a pseudonym for J.K. Rowling, I believe, where she writes adult thrillers with this pen name. The first book in this series is The Cuckoo's Calling, and I read it several years ago and quite enjoyed it, so I wanted to continue with the series, but at the time I didn't have access to these books, and so I decided to purchase them now. I will put them down because they're very heavy. This is the second book in the series, The Silkworm. To be honest with you, I will have to probably reread book 1 in order to read this series as a general because I have forgotten almost everything from it, and I couldn't tell you anything about the plot of this one or how they're connected in any way. And then we have book number 5, which is Troubled Blood, and book number 6, The Ink Black Heart. None of these are the same editions or the same size even, and I don't even have book 1 as of right now here, so this is a total mess, but it doesn't matter to me. I will be very happy to read this, although, oh my god, this is over 1,000 pages of a thriller. So anyway, as always, the author's writing is very gripping and is easy to read and digest, so I'm sure I'm gonna get through these in no time as soon as I get to them. Next, we have The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. I know exactly 0 things about this book. I just went into the store and I saw it laying there with the standard thriller color scheme and the standard thriller title, and I was like, this is gonna be fun probably, so I purchased it and now I have it. And that is that. And last from these genres of thriller and mystery, we have Never by Ken Follett. Again, I don't know anything about this book. I have heard the name of this author in relation to the Pillars of the Earth series, if I'm not mistaken, and I've heard great things about it. And I've heard great things about this too. I know that his writing style is very gripping and interesting, and that was enough for me to pick this book up. I have actually seen it in the same bookstore several times, and every time I was like, should I pick it up?
And I was like, nah, I don't know enough about this book to pick it up. And then I'd go again and it'd still be there, and I'd be like, maybe, I don't know. And then last time I went, I was like, I either purchase it now, or next time I come, somebody would have already taken it, and so I decided to not waste time anymore.
It is a chunker, over 700 pages, but that has never stopped me from reading a book, so. And now let's continue with some sci-fi. And the first on that list is Strata by Terry Pratchett. To be honest with you, I don't know if this should be qualified as sci-fi or fantasy. I can never tell with his books, but for the purposes of this conversation, I decided to put it as sci-fi. This is a standalone book by the author. It's still a very small, like he likes to write them, and it's about a company that builds planets, if I'm not mistaken. It is a very old one. I believe it was published in like 1981 or something like that. Yes, 1981 published for the first time, and I've never heard anything about it prior to seeing it in the stores. It looked quite interesting. This cover, by the way, is insane and is one of the reasons why I decided to purchase it. So very excited. Next we have The Red Scholar's Wake by Aliette Dubaudard. I believe this is an adult standalone sci-fi, and I got it in my Illumicrate box for January, if I'm not mistaken. I will link the video here where I unbox it and review it in more depth, plus going through the synopsis and all of that. I am quite undecided whether I'm excited to read this, but it has the potential to be a very interesting read, so I will be curious to review it once I've gone through it. Next we have The Stone Sky by N.K. Jemisin. This is the third and final book in the Broken Earth trilogy, I believe. I have the other two up on my shelves, but I haven't read any of them yet. I know that the writing style of this series is very interesting, and that the author has put so much imagination and creativity in building this story and this mystery, and I am very curious to get to it. I saw the book in the store and I thought it would be nice to complete the series so that if I pick it up and like it, I can binge it. Next we have a classic dystopian sci-fi that I've been wanting to read ever since I can remember, basically, and that is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. This is a book that everybody's familiar with. It's about the dystopian state that burns books, and the firemen in this universe actually are the ones who set the books on fire rather than putting out fires. It follows one specific fireman, and that's pretty much all I'm going to say about it, because that's pretty much all I know about it. I know that it's a staple in the dystopian genre and that people are saying amazing things about it and about Ray Bradbury's writing. I've been wanting to get into it for the longest time, and I think this is going to be a great place to start. Also, for some reason, I love this simplistic cover. I think it's just lovely. And the last book in the sci-fi genre is another somewhat classic dystopian, and that is The Giver by Louise Lowry. This is a book that back when I started watching booktube, maybe in 2018 or something like that, it was the first book I actually heard somebody speak about, and I was even back then very curious to read it. And then recently my mom read it and said I should definitely give it a try, and it's a very short one. This is the first book in the Giver quartet, I believe. It's set in a world where there's no pain and no war and no sorrow and no sickness anymore, but there is one person that keeps humanity's memories or something like that, and we follow a boy who is supposed to become that next person to carry all the memories, but he discovers some deeper secrets, darker secrets beneath society's perfect surface, and I'm very much looking forward to reading it. Also, look at this cover. Oh, so gorgeous. Am I the only one who likes these covers? So when I saw it in the bookstore the other day, I was like, this is a sign. I definitely need to pick it up. So hopefully I'll be able to read it this year. There are so many great books. I can't possibly find time for all of them, and that is the saddest thing ever. And now it's time for some contemporary novels, which is a very rare occasion on my channel to have any contemporary. And the first book in the genre is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. This author is the favorite author to so many of my closest people. It's impressive, really. My mom loves this author. She has read everything that's ever been translated by him to Bulgarian and loved it, and she recommended this book to me. She read it fairly recently, so I added it to my reading challenge for 2023, and I am so very much looking forward to reading it. I've been staying away from this author for no reason really for such a long time, and I am ready finally to plunge into his books. And next we have a contemporary middle grade series by an Armenian author, and that is Manunia by Narine Abgarean. This is in Bulgarian, obviously. This is the trilogy of short stories, if I'm not mistaken, about this young girl Manunia that goes through some adventures and it's supposed to be very funny, and that's pretty much all I know about it. This author has been recommended to me by a friend of mine, and I put this book on my reading challenge for 2023, but I believe I will exchange it for another book by the same author, which comes next. And that is Three Apples Fell from the Sky. Again, this is the Bulgarian edition of the book. This is supposed to be a very deep, somewhat heart-wrenching story, which is all I know about it. And it's got all kinds of awards and all of that. So I am definitely gonna read this. And the last book in this genre is again by the same author, Narine Abgaryan, and the book is called Zulali. Again, it is in Bulgarian. This is supposed to be another collection of short stories that are supposed to be funny in a lot of ways. And what I've heard is that whenever you feel sad, you should just read this book and it's gonna make you feel better. So who knows? I've never read anything by this author, and it's the first time I purchased 5 books by a contemporary author I know nothing about besides the comments of one person. So this is a testament to how much I trust my friend. And we are done with the contemporary, so we can move on now to the romance and romantic suspense. And the first book on this list is another book of my 2023 reading challenge, and that is 500 Miles From You by Jenny Colgan. This is the third book in it used to be called the Scottish Bookshop series, and now it's called Kirin Fief or something like that. But I read the first 2 books, The Bookshop on the Corner and The Bookshop on the Shore, last year, and surprisingly, I enjoyed them quite a lot. They are messy, but they're also set in very cozy places and very interesting. And I wanted to complete the trilogy because, well, it's 3 books and I wanted to have a series completed, so I decided this is going to be a part of the series that I'm going to read through this year. I don't know which character of the series it follows, so it's going to be a surprise for me, but I'm hoping to read it probably in the beginning of the summer and be done with this series already. And then we have 2 romantic suspense books by the same author, and those are True Betrayals and Hidden Riches by Nora Roberts. Now listen, I have never read anything by the author, but I've heard great things about her from a friend of mine and from my mom, and I thought it would be interesting to kind of dive into these. I've been known to like romantic suspense, especially from more old school authors, I would say. I very much enjoy the romantic suspense that was written by Julie Garwood. I thought this could be similar and I might enjoy it, and to be honest with you, I am a big fan of these cheesy covers. This is the exact type of cover I like. We'll see when I'll be able to get to them. And the last book I'm going to put here is not really romance or maybe even related to romance, but I didn't know where else to put it. It's poetry, and it's actually haiku, classic Japanese short poems. This is a book I saw here in the store and initially didn't have any intention on purchasing it, but as soon as I opened it, I was like, okay, I need to have this. I don't know how to show you. This is a very interesting design, obviously, but the pages are double. Like, this is what a page looks like from the book. You can see here, and then every poem is written in the original Japanese and then translated into English with the Japanese phonetic pronunciation, and that is really awesome. And I decided, okay, I'm gonna splurge and get it because first of all, it's a very beautiful book, but also I've been very curious about the art of haiku for a while now, and I wanted to experience it myself. So what better way to educate myself than getting a book on that? And now it's time to continue with some classics. And the first one is going to be another of the books that I have on my reading challenge for 2023, and that is The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. I know 0 things about this book besides the fact that it was recommended by a friend and I put it on my list to definitely read in 2023. So I am going to do that, but I'm a little bit intimidated because it is a big book. It's like over 700 pages and it's going to be a heavy read. I don't know how I'm going to get through it, but I'm going to do my best. I will report back as soon as I've read it. Next we have Persuasion by Jane Austen. Jane Austen is one of my favorite authors and I've been wanting to read this book for years and I haven't yet for some reason, but I finally purchased it and I will probably tackle it sooner rather than later. I don't know what it's about. It's one of them classic courtship stories with family dramas and interpersonal relationships, I would assume, because this is what Jane Austen writes, but whatever she writes, I'm gonna read it. Whatever she has written, rather. I'm gonna read it because she can make absolutely everything interesting. And the last of the classics I have here is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I have undertaken to read through some of the classics that have intimidated me for years and to do it as soon as possible, and A Tale of Two Cities is one of those. It's so funny that it's a book that is so widespread in the modern pop culture, yet I somehow know nothing about it. But I like this edition because it has some illustrations and and as I mentioned earlier, I always feel better about reading a book with illustrations. Hopefully I'll be able to read it soon and extrapolate some wisdom from it like I usually do with classics. And we're gonna finish this video with 2 nonfiction books, the first of which is the 80-20 Manager by Richard Koch. This is 10 ways to become a great leader. Now, you probably don't know that about me, but I work as a director of a department in a tech company, and I've been doing this for years. But the truth is that no matter how long you do this job, and no matter how many things you overcome and how much you learn, there's always moments when I feel like I'm not doing enough for my team, and I could do better, and I could be better for them. And even if I do my best, there's always moments of doubt. I think this is a normal human emotion, and I would like to make sure that I grow in my work, not just with my technical knowledge, but also with my methods for helping people in my department. Long story short, I saw this book in the store and I thought it would be interesting to actually read it, so I purchased it, and I'm hoping it's going to bring me some useful knowledge. We'll see. With the self-help books, which this essentially is, it's very much hit or miss, but why not give it a chance? And we're gonna end this book haul with Bad Blood by John Carreyrou. The subtitle of this book is Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. This is a book that addresses Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes and this whole situation and how it transpired. The author is an investigative journalist that's done some, investigating on the situation and gathered first and second-hand testimonies and put them in this book. The book is technically nonfiction, but it's written a little bit like a fiction novel, so it's very easy to read through and to get captured by the story. And I read it as an ebook last year or the year before that, I'm not entirely sure. I think it was 2021, and I read it within no time. I had such a great time reading this, although it's kind of a devastating book. Still, I learned quite a lot, and I was so shocked that I didn't know anything about the story up until like 2020. And so I highly recommend it. If you haven't read it, please pick it up. It's going to open your eyes about so many things. And when I saw it in the store the other day, I decided to pick it up because despite the fact that I've read it, I would probably like to read it one day again, and I would like to own it because I liked it quite a lot. And those were all the books that I have for you today. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you managed to see some books that sparked your curiosity. If that happened, please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like to see a playlist of all of my book hauls so far, click here. Bye.